Hello everyone, welcome back to the Easily Amused channel with our update on our grow tower. It has been a lot of ups and downs, mostly in the pH measurement category. Little growing pun here. But as you can see, it is definitely growing. There's a lot of stuff on here. We have actually had to trim back the lettuce twice now. We have had to trim back the rainbow chard at least once. And we had to trim back the spinach way up here at least once. But I want to kind of fill you guys in on some of the stuff that's worked, some of the stuff that hasn't worked, and some of the growing pains that we've had. So let's get right to it. All right, well, welcome back to the Easily Amused channel. If you're just now joining us, you should probably check out the first video first, talking about the build of the grow tower. We're going to go a little bit more in depth. We've been, again, growing for a little over a month now, and I want to talk about some of the things that we have learned, good and bad, about the grow tower and what we've had to do. First and foremost, I want to throw out there that AI has been just absolutely phenomenal in helping us with this project. Starting a conversation in Grok, for example, and then going back into that same conversation, it remembers that our well water has high pH. It remembers that our well water has high alkalinity. It remembers the last time we added 5 milliliters of vinegar, that it didn't seem to change the pH very much, the buffering capacity, and it continues that conversation. It remembers it, and it's been absolutely instrumental. With that being mentioned, we originally started off using vinegar as our way of lowering our pH, and that was fantastic, except that every couple days the pH was right back where it was. So we learned through chatting with AI that our well water has alkalinity, high alkalinity and buffering capacity, meaning it already has some TDS, already has some total dissolved solids, and buffering capacity means that it resists pH change. So I talked about in the first video that we had purchased the pH up and the pH down, and I even put in the video that we were not planning on using it, and I'm eating my words here right now, because we absolutely are using these because they help to offset the buffering capacity quite a lot, and the pH down has been just fantastic in controlling it. And the pH down is just phosphoric acid. It's actually not that unnatural at all. So we did switch over to using this from the vinegar, even though we didn't really want to. We did start off just because I already have graduated cylinders because of the distilling, and we were pouring liquid from here over to here to get 4 or 5 milliliters, 3 milliliters, whatever the correct dosage was, to get the pH down. But we actually found that a medicine doser, which we got from Kroger, I don't know if they gave it to us when we got a prescription previously or not, but this has been just fantastic. The pH up and down from General Hydroponics comes with a 1 milliliter pipette, and if you got to add 6 milliliters, 5 milliliters, it's just a pain. And being able to do this 5 milliliters at a time has been much, much better than trying to pour it over into here and then pour from here over to there and then having to rinse this back out. So highly recommend going to the grocery store and getting one of these if you don't already have one. If you have children, you probably already have one. Also, I mentioned in the previous video that I had designed this, inspired by the whiskey thieves that we use in the distillery, that we would be able to slide this into the hole and capture a water sample and pour it into a cup before using our testing equipment. We are still using the devices that I previously recommended. Absolutely love these. Also discovered that not only does this have total dissolved solids, but it also has EC measurements, which once we started using AI to help with this process, we realized that was an important factor to take into consideration as well. That way you know a little bit more than just what the TDS is. So this, while it worked for taking a very small sample, to fill this cup up to about here, which is about where we need it to use these two devices, I was scooping 6, 7, 8 times, and I was spilling, and I was making a mess. So what I did is just short little easy bit of creativity. I had a spare piece of PVC pipe. It's not even actually a PVC pipe. It's a part that goes on the bottom of a drain. Anyway, it's a down tube. But anyway, PVC pipe would work. I took it to the bandsaw, cut a little shape in it like this. I can slide this into the hole. The water catches in here, drains out this side. We can hold the cup here, and we can collect it. This has actually been absolutely phenomenal for our needs for two reasons. One, it makes sampling a whole lot easier. We don't drip, we don't make a mess. The last thing I want to do is drip water all over our library, the room that we're currently in, and start growing mold. Because if you splash water on your floor too many times, on your wall too many times, you will start growing mold. It's just going to happen. The other nice thing is that after adding our nutrient, it changes the pH a lot of times, and we're then chasing the pH. That's why I said there's a lot of ups and downs at the beginning of the video. It was a pun, but it is the truth. We have had to change the pH of our liquid pretty often, and sometimes the answer has been dilution. So when we have found our TDS to be around 1400 and our goal is 1000, we've had to dilute it. And so we have literally just hung this in the hole and put our 2.5 gallon jug right here and just sat there and let it fill until it had about a gallon. And then taken our 1 gallon jug of water straight out of our well and dumped it right in there. And then waited about 15-20 minutes of the water running to get a measurement and find, have we corrected the TDS? Has the pH changed? What's going on? So this has allowed us to basically let the pump that's already running and the water that's already falling out of the tower and sneak just a little bit of water out of it, or if we leave it for a long time, we can collect a gallon or so of water. So that's been a very big help. Super easy. I mean, what would that cost? 30 cents if you had to go buy the PVC pipe for it. PVC is pretty cheap, 2-inch pipe, I guess this is. So very easy, and you might already have it lying around or have something else that would work in its place. What else we got? The other thing that we've been using is 3% hydrogen peroxide solution. So very good disinfectant on a hard surface such as plastic to destroy any kind of algae or bacteria or fungus that might be growing, any yeasts and molds as well. First thing that we did is we diluted it and put it in a spray bottle that we already had. I covered it in blue tape because if you don't know, hydrogen peroxide is in a dark jug because UV light, such as the ones aiming at our tower or in the window, any kind of light actually destroys hydrogen peroxide. And so I just covered it with blue painter's tape because I had it. I already had the bottle, didn't want to go out and buy another bottle. I guess I could have put the spray top on top of here. But no, this is actually diluted quite a bit. I'll figure out the measurements and put that at the end of the video. I lied and didn't wait till the end of the video. You can pause it and take a look here. I got this information right from Grok. Should be 0.3%. Also had an 8-ounce bottle, so here's the measurements to make the exact ratio I needed. This is heavily diluted so that it can be sprayed right on the roots, not on the roots, I'm sorry, right on the growth material. So we've got the rock wool, and it started spotting with mold. Well, mildew, mold. So mildew would be if it was on the plant, mold is if it's not on a plant. So yeah, I'm a stickler for that because I am an indoor air quality expert. That is my trade by day. So y'all might have seen that in my previous videos. But the mold that you have growing on your shower is not mildew because it's not on a plant. So it's actually mold. Mildew just sounds so much nicer. But anyway, tangent over. So it was growing on the rock wool, not really on the plants. So by having the diluted amount of hydrogen peroxide, we were actually able to spray it right on the mold that was growing on the growth medium, and we have seen a drastic reduction in the mold that was growing on it. It's a very wet environment in a hydroponic system, so it's not uncommon. The other thing that we're using hydrogen peroxide for is when we go to clean out our system, we go to dump all the liquid out and replace it with new liquid, which we're doing about every 2 weeks. Give or take a vacation or two. So sometimes it's been 10 days, sometimes it's been 18 days, whatever. We've only done it 3 times total this entire process. But what we've been doing is, again, using AI to calculate if I have 5 gallons of liquid in here, how much hydrogen peroxide at 3% can I add to not stress the plants, not kill the root systems, not burn the roots, but to help to sterilize the entire tower if I'm only running it for 15 to 30 minutes. So in a little chat with Grok AI, it told me exactly how much. It worked out the math and told me all the reasoning behind how much 3% hydrogen peroxide could I add into the bucket. All right, another quick interruption just to show you guys again how Grok has helped. First, I asked it to repeat to me how much hydrogen peroxide added to the 5 gallons to the tower system to run for 30 minutes, where it won't be strong enough to hurt the plants, but it'll be strong enough to fend off algae, bacteria, funguses, etc. Which it immediately started telling me that my TDS was too high and that my pH was wrong. So, got down to the end, and skipped all that. And I said, hey, my pH is exactly 6 now, and my TDS is exactly 1,000, which is correct. Can you give me the last answer, but with that information in mind? And it's great news. Tower has been fixed, blah, blah, blah. So down here, purpose 30-minute flush with H2O2 will clean the system. The 5 gallons, pH is 6, TDS is 1,000. Plant sensitivity, lettuce, dill, and strawberries have delicate roots. So it needs to be a mild concentration, while cucumber and chard are slightly hardier. Starting with 3% hydrogen peroxide for a 30-minute flush. So it's telling me to use it at 2.5 to 5 milliliters per gallon. And then it's even explaining the range here. So the 2.5 was effective for killing most algae, bacteria, and fungus with minimal risk to sensitive plants. 5 milliliters per gallon, which is actually what we use. And we ran it for 30 minutes. So then it tells you how much to add in here, step-by-step process, running the flush, draining it, refilling it, and then putting the proper nutrients in the pH, safety precautions and everything else. And so it kind of gives you the final answer and then gives you tips on monitoring after that. Have it run through the tower for 30 minutes, turn it off. Then I took a gallon jug of water, just dumped it in the top of the tower, to clear out the peroxide that had built up in there, to try to get it off the root systems, try to get it, as much of it out of the growth medium as possible, really to dilute it, to try to get as much of this out. And then I added a ton of this, a hefty squeeze of this directly into the bucket with the water turned off. It's not pumping through the tower. And I stirred that up. And the idea was I wanted to disinfect the bucket before I pumped all that out. Then I pumped all the water out of the bucket, or we are pumping all the water out of the bucket, refilled it with about another couple gallons of water, stirred it around, pumped that out again. And the idea again is to get as much of the peroxide out as we can. Now we know the peroxide, added into a water solution, it's going to have a very short life. Especially as it comes in contact with the TDS, that's actually going to cause the peroxide to destroy itself, and it's going to become water and oxygen, which is actually good. It'll keep the anaerobic bacteria from growing inside of the tower. It's actually a good product to use for that very reason. And in fact, we took it a step further and we did the calculations on how much peroxide can we keep in the bucket at any given time where it won't stress out the plants. Now again, knowing it's only going to live for about, or not live, it's only going to exist for about 24 to 48 hours inside of the tower. Again, I'll get those measurements up on the screen here. There they are. I'm guessing, because hopefully I did the math and figured it out by now. Right there. Anyway, we put this many milliliters per gallon into the tower with the idea that, within 24 to 48 hours, there would be no more hydrogen peroxide. It would just become water and oxygen. And that would help to keep the whole tower system clean. If we start noticing algae buildup, if we start noticing any kind of fungal buildup or anything like that, we've considered dropping a aquarium UV light that's actually a disinfecting light just straight down into the black bucket that we had before to keep the water that's in the bucket sterilized. We're trying to avoid that though, because there are some good bacteria that would be in the tower system that we don't want to eliminate. So that's kind of a last step recourse if we get there. Hopefully we will not. Another invention that I did is I told you guys before in the last video that once we added minerals to the tower system, we would no longer be able to use it as a place to start seeds. We really kind of needed a nursery for that. But I didn't love the idea of transporting the rock wool with a newly growing plant into a new thing. So instead I invented this. Pretty basic, pretty simple. It holds this in, and then it's got holes all the way around so that it doesn't, so it can breathe. I went to the dollar store. I actually recorded a video of me finding the cups. If I can find it, I'll show that next. But I found these cups. It was a 3-pack for $1.25, and they happen to be the exact same color I was already using and fit perfectly, which is funny because I designed this first. I got out about 6 or 7 cups around the house, made sure that the measurement would work on pretty much any cup that I had, from a pint glass to a rocks glass. As long as it's tall enough to fit this entire thing, can be able to put that on there. We started our nursery. Whenever we put a new seed in, we start spraying it. So basically, when we know that we are going to be picking something that will not regrow. So if we know that we're going to be picking dill and it's not going to regrow, which it will, so that's a bad example, but if we were to pick at something that we know won't regrow, we can go ahead and start this a couple weeks before we plan to move it over into the tower. So at the same time that we're removing the fully grown plant from the tower, we will be taking this out of the nursery and moving it straight over without disrupting the root system. If any kind of roots have started growing through, we're not going to be stressing that system by using the same thing. So the file for this is going to be on printables, and I'll have a link to it in the description for anyone that would like to start the nursery. So let me turn the camera around, and I'm going to show you guys what we have going on with the tower so far. I'll show you guys how we are thieving the water out using the PVC pipe, and I'll show you guys the nursery that we have going on. Alright, so the tower system is still a mess down here. I told you guys in the last video that we would start to dress this up as we figured out how this was going to work, start to hide these cords as we figured all this stuff out, and we're not done figuring it all out. So it is still kind of a mess. We still have this foil backer on here because I only wanted to use the 2 lights. I don't think the foil backer is necessary. It's probably not even really doing much of anything, but it could be protecting the walls of the log cabin from too much UV light. I don't know. Here is our nursery. This is a standard nursery that I bought from Lowe's, and it is made for the big large seeds starters, but instead we've got our pods in here. You know, the overflow water falls down in there every single time that we water it, so it's not soaking in the water. And our goal here is just to get the rock wool wet so that it can start to grow. And my daughter had her chia seeds in here, and they died. But anyway, so you can see here, these plants are starting to grow, and these are right at about the right time to go ahead and start transferring it over to the tower. And then here's a perfect example of the rock wool starting to get a little bit of that white moldy stuff on there. And so we would spray this with peroxide, even if there was plants in it, like this plant here. If I can zoom in a little bit and get a focus on, there we go. You can see that there is mold growing around this plant. So we're going to go ahead and spray it. It shouldn't harm the plant as long as it doesn't start growing on the plant, but the peroxide won't harm it either, and it'll go ahead and take care of that problem right away. And then we will come over here, and we've got a couple spots that are empty where the plant either died, or we had to pick it, or it just didn't seem to be growing very well. So we will grab it from our nursery and we will move it right over to here. And the idea is, as we trim stuff back, we will continue doing it. So here we have our dill that was trimmed. This is what it looked like. Smells just amazing. I mean, if you touch it, it just fills the whole room with the smell. So the dill has been trimmed pretty heavily, but then it started growing. So the original plan was to just pull that out and put more dill in, but we kind of wanted to see what happened. Swiss chard as well. We did quite a bit of trimming off of this, but you can see new leaves have started sprouting. So again, we were planning on replanting the Swiss chard once we picked it. We got some basil here. You can see our cucumbers growing pretty long. I'm going to have to build some kind of a trellis or something for it to grow off of. You can see that leader is definitely looking for something to grow off of. Our strawberries are starting to kind of flower up a little bit. Don't know how long it takes for them to grow. This one's doing great. This one's not. This one's getting a little bit of burn on the leaves. Again, we've had some trouble with the pH raising and lowering a little bit too aggressively sometimes. And then our lettuce, we have trimmed this 2 or 3 times, and it just keeps growing back, and it is some fantastic tasting lettuce. In fact, we picked this lettuce and we were going to add it to our salad. We handed it to our kids, and they literally ate it before they got back to the table. They were just chewing on it. But let me show you guys what I mean by being able to thief water out. My pump actually just now turned off, and I'm going to try to do this one-handed. Let's see here. So let me turn the pump back on. We actually went to a run for 45 minutes, turn the water off for 15 cycle, and it seems to be working great for us. So this one here, I really need to switch out with the one that has a blank spot. But you can see whenever I open it up, the water is just free-flowing down through the hole. So if I have my cup ready, and I can take this, and I can slide it in here, right? It will actually start draining water from the tower. So let me try to do this one-handed so I can show you guys what I'm doing, and hopefully not embarrass myself here. There we go. So it just hangs in there, and there I go. I'm collecting water. Even one-handed it works. And as you can see, it doesn't flow out very fast, but if I take my 2.5 gallon jug and I put a funnel on it, I can collect as much water as I need out of there. Whenever I'm done, I just lift up on it, it drains back in there, and I set it right here for it to drip dry. And now I've collected all the sampling that I need, or I've been able to drain out, a couple gallons of water and be able to re-add it. You can see here that The blue petg might have been a bad idea. I wanted blue because I thought it would look good in the library, but as the water does overflow out of the bottoms of these cups pretty heavily. I showed in the previous video that I had labels on each of these. They were just stuck on there with sticky tape, and I told you guys I was going to make some nice hang tags for it. Just turns out it wasn't necessary. We can look at the plants and we know what they are. So really, it's not like a garden where you got it all in the soil and you're trying to figure out what this plant is going to be. This is all growing in one hydroponic system, so we don't really care as long as it's growing. But you can see here that anywhere that the water leaks out, you know, the grow nutrients are just coating this with this white. And we can clean it off, but it just comes right back within a day or two. And you can see the higher up we get, the less we see it, all the way up to the very top cap. This one gets kind of stuck on. It gets so thick on there. So just keep in mind that that could happen. And then when it does drain all the way down, there's enough of a crack here. And then whenever I siliconed this to the bucket, I only siliconed certain spots because I did actually, you know, think ahead of time that if water got on top of this lid, I wanted it to be able to drain into the bucket, and it does. I was originally going to drill some holes, but whenever I only siliconed certain sections of it in place, I figured it would drain underneath, and it has been so far. So that's the tower. The last tool that I used this tower as an excuse to buy is a tool that I've been wanting for a long time anyway, and it is the Milwaukee 12-volt pump, 9 gallons a minute. And what I can do is we can lift this tower off. We can plop this right down inside of the tower. It's hooked up to a garden hose that's just spitting out the front yard, and I turn this thing on, and within about, I don't know, a minute, it's completely drained the entire, not even a minute, it's drained the entire 5 gallons. And then I can use, as I said, my 2.5 gallon jug, and I can refill it with a bit more water, stir it around, pump it out again, do that a couple times if I need to, especially if I'm worried about, you know, any kind of sediment or anything in there. And it's a very quick and efficient way to get it out of there, but it's probably overkill. If I were to do this again, I would be using a spacer here to bring this lid up much higher, and instead of having this that dispenses the liquid in 3 different places to kind of spread it out, instead I would design a cap that snapped on top of there and then hooked up to a garden hose or hooked up to any kind of PVC hose. So essentially I could use the pump in the bottom of the bucket to pump the water out of the bucket. And when it stops pumping water, I would just turn it off, add more water, and go from there. So that would be a great way to be able to use the pump that I already have, multi-purpose, and keep it going. You'll notice I did not add the hole. I did not add anything for how to see the water level on here. I'm needing about 1 gallon of water per week. So honestly, the ability to check the water level is kind of a moot point. It just doesn't really seem to be necessary. If I was having to check the water level daily, or if this was outside, for example, and using sunlight instead, I know there'd be a lot more evaporation, so then I really would be needing to obsessively check the water level to make sure that it had enough, and making sure that it's actually working, or not getting too low. And then I would probably go ahead with my idea that I said in the first video of creating some kind of a device to measure the amount of water inside of the bucket without having to actually open it up, just be able to see from 20 feet away and see how full it is. But as you can see, it's growing pretty well, and it really has not needed a lot. We check the water level, and we replenish the water level about once a week, and we adjust then the TDS or the pH, whatever needs to be adjusted at that point. And then I'm going to record my screen and show you guys some of the prompts that I have used on Grok, which, you know, is the x.com AI. I used ChatGPT as well. I won't say I didn't like the results, but it didn't seem to tailor the results quite as well. And it also didn't seem to tell me why it was making the changes. It really just kind of gave me the answer. So I ended up preferring to use Grok. I have both of those and Gemini built into my phone. So, you know, I could have used any number of resources on it, and I'm sure that it'll probably work well for anyone who wants to use it. But let's take a look at that. All right, so I'm going to go into the Grok app. You can go into X and then go to Grok from there, but the history is different, which is kind of weird. So here's my hydroponic lettuce growing system. This is you can see how far down it scrolls. So for example, it knows things about my well water. So if I were to say I have 5 gallons, sorry for my bad typing, I would usually voice to text. I have 5 gallons in the system. The pH is at, let's go real low, 5.2. What should I do? I guess I know what to do. I could just ask it how much pH up to add. But so it knows, you can see here that it knows that I have lettuce and dill and cucumber and rainbow chard and strawberries. It remembers all of that, which is kind of cool because it means that it kind of tailors its answers based on that. But then here it's telling me the pH. My target 5.8 to 6. I'm really shooting for 6 pretty much all the time. It remembers I have high alkalinity in my well water, and it knows that I'm using pH up. You can see right there. You can see right there. So recommended pH up addition, and then if I want to skip the step-by-step process, you know, my expected outcome, and then I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom, monitoring and notes. So final answer: add 3.75 milliliters of the hydroponic pH up solution to 5 gallons. If I were to also say my TDS is at 1400, which is very high. I'm hoping to have my TDS be around 1000. So it knows that I'm at 5 gallons. It continues the conversation. It knows my pH is at 5.2. TDS is 1400. So you know it's definitely too acidic. 1400 ppm, which is higher than my ideal for my crops, which it knows what they are. It knows my well water is at 7.2. So it's going to calculate dilution here for me. It's going to actually tell me, instead of putting pH up in, it knows that my well water has a high pH anyway. So it's actually going to tell me exactly step by step, you know, to add new liquid and how much to add. So it's still calculating the answer. So I'm going to take out about 2.5 gallons of well water, and which has a natural TDS of 127 the last time I measured it, and I'm going to probably start at 2.5 gallons, and I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to add 2.5 gallons of my well water, which should raise the pH and should hopefully take the TDS where it needs to be. It is telling me to go ahead and add pH up to it, because I guess it thinks that after adding 2.5 gallons it's not going to correct it, but I would actually do one at a time. I would take care of the TDS first, get it to where it needs to be, and then I would adjust the pH. But y'all can see how, I mean, this has just been an absolute blessing to have, and so I highly recommend everyone give that a try. And that's what I'm going to end on, is that is definitely something that we had to learn the hard way, is whenever we are adding new liquid to this, whenever we are adding water to it to get it back up to the water level it needs to be, whenever we're trying to make an adjustment, we work on water level first, adding the water in. We work on the TDS second. We let the system run for 15 to 20, 30 minutes or so to try to get the TDS to the nutrient to actually blend in. If we need to add water and we need to add nutrient, we go ahead and we use our 1 gallon jug that we have left over, and we add the nutrient to the water in the jug, shake it up, and then that's what we add in here. So we've already kind of started the mixing process, so it doesn't have to all happen through the pump inside of the bucket. I don't want to sit here and try to stir this bucket. So we'll look at raising the water level back to where it needs to be. We'll look at adding the nutrient if need be. If we don't need to add nutrient, we will then immediately, we'll wait 15, 20 minutes for the new water to cycle through, measure the pH at that time, and that's when we will try to adjust the pH. We were constantly trying to add, pH adjusters and change the TDS at the same time, and that was not working out well. Another big thing that might seem obvious to everybody, in fact it seems completely obvious to myself and my wife now, but wasn't obvious to us at the time, but at one point this got down to about 2 gallons of water missing, and the TDS was just skyrocketing, and we had kind of in our own mind thought that the nutrients would be pulled into the plants and we'd have to keep adding nutrients to the water to get the TDS back up, but it was actually doing the opposite. But it wasn't. What happened is the water evaporated out of the system, the water got absorbed into the plants, and when that happened, the concentration of the nutrients raised way up. Once we added the 2 gallons of water back in here, the TDS was back to where it needed to be. But with taking in mind that you don't know which nutrients are being absorbed by the plants, so it is very important that you are still dumping all the water out of this bucket on a regular basis and replacing it and starting with a whole new batch of water, with a whole new batch of nutrients, a whole new adjusted pH and everything on the regular basis. We're doing it about every 2 weeks, as I said. You might want to do it more often, less often. If we were not in a library, if we were in a garage with concrete floors, if we were out on a front porch, if we were somewhere where we didn't care about dripping water or making a mess so it wasn't a big to-do every single time, we might replace it every week. If I did, like I said, and I made the attachment that would go on the top and allow that to pump the water out instead of using the stick pump every single time, it would be a lot quicker and a lot easier. And so we might be replacing it more often. But as it is now, this system is working very, very well. In fact, we are considering adding a couple of these towers directly into our distillery so that we can pick our mint, and we can pick some of the other herbs that we use in the distillery whenever we are making cocktails right from a grow tower that would be right next to the bar. So if we decide to do that, maybe that'll be part of a future video and you'll get to see that. And if you decide to go down the route of adding a nursery, it has been great so far, and I'll give you guys updates on that as we go to transfer the plants from here over to here, and how well does the transfer work, and does it keep going. So my next goal, we have the plants growing, we've got our nutrient solution working, we've got our pH working, everything seems to be going fine. We actually think we're probably going to add a second tower here and a third light. Now that we know that some of these plants prefer, a higher pH and more TDS, and some of the plants prefer a lower pH and less TDS, it would be nice to have 2 bucket systems here, and that's why I didn't work so hard on trying to make this super appealing yet, just because I knew that as we learned, we would change, and I would have not thought that we would have been thinking about a second tower already, but I think that's probably going to be our next step, a second tower, and we're probably going to print it in white petg. And you can probably guess why. So thanks again for watching. This is Andy Brady with the Easily Amused channel. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. If this is something that you are planning to do yourself, please leave in the comments if you think that there's something I'm doing completely wrong, something that is working really well. If you're having problems, post on here, or if you're seeing that I'm just doing something that there's just an easier way, or maybe there's something so painfully obvious that I'm doing wrong, and you're watching this, I don't know why, if you already know how to use all this, but if you're watching this and you see something that's just painfully obvious that I should be doing different, please jump in the comments, let me know anything to make this system easier, and then other people will be reading the comments as well, and so they can learn from your successes or failures, what's worked or not worked for you. So again, thanks again for watching. Andy Brady, Easily Amused channel.